Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. I'm not Jamie Glazov. I'm Josh Brewster filling in for Jamie Glazov. And don't forget, the Glazov Gang is brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and truthrevolt.org. Tonight, my esteemed panelists, Karen Siegemund from Rage Against the Media, Bill Whittle from BillWhittle.com and truthrevolt.org, and Mell Flynn from the Hollywood Congress of Republicans. Good evening, panelists.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Hey.
Good to be here.
Good to have you here. Karen, I want to start off with you tonight. Tell me a little bit about Rage Against the Media, because that sort of sounds like my mental state on a 24-hour basis.
And it really resonates with almost everybody I mention this to. We started rageagainstthemedia.org after the slaughter in Benghazi, realizing that whatever else happens, the media, being as partisan as it is, as corrupt, as dishonest, as depraved, you name it as it is, it's not a level playing field out there. And when our friends, neighbors, relatives think they know the truth, but all they know is a bunch of lies, it's impossible to move forward. So we are an activist organization. We fight against the mainstream media in the real world, on social media, and a whole host of ways. So,
Karen, before I move on, then let me ask you a question. It's interesting when people basically go on and on about Fox News. I've always found it very interesting because when I was growing up, which was a long time ago, if your town had a paper that was sort of liberal and your town had a paper that was sort of conservative, and everybody just kind of handled it. They just kind of handled it.
Right. And the problem now is most of the alternative, the right-wing conservative papers are gone, number one. There was also... what we have now is a press, especially the networks, that pretend to be objective. So people spend all day, all Sunday, reading the New York Times, thinking they've got the truth, but in fact, they're stupider after spending all day than they were that morning. And that's the real problem.
Very good. Here's a guy who you all know and love, folks. Here he is, Mr. Bill Whittle from BillWhittle.com, and very happy to report from TruthRevolt.org.
How about that?
Bill, we find you at Truth Revolt now?
Once a week, I do Afterburners for PJTV, and I brought back a set called Firewall, which is kind of Afterburner without the tie. It's a little more loose, and we've done 3 of them now. We shot 3 of them yesterday, put up one today, and funny you mentioned Benghazi because the one that we have in the can is it's called Why Benghazi Matters, and you know, you don't have to use any invective, and you don't have to get outraged. Actually, the most effective way to tell that story is just if you just methodically go through the timeline of what happened without any editorializing whatsoever, and you just lay out the facts. It's absolutely damning. And you know, I know you can relate to this idea that when we talk about liberal media, I think so many people, especially progressives, think, oh, so you want a conservative media. It's like, I don't want a conservative media. We're as likely to fall into error as anybody else. I want our feet held to the fire, too. God knows some of the biggest problems in Washington are Republicans. We just want people to tell the truth. I thought people were hard on President Bush, maybe harder than he deserved, but that's the job of the press. And it's the job of the president to be able to defend himself against that kind of attack. When the press not only doesn't cover news stories, but actually covers them up.
Yes.
Not only are they not doing their job as the body's immune system, but they're doing something worse. If they don't cover a story, people have the assumption that, well, there can't be a story there because I didn't see it on CBS, therefore it's just some fiction. So by suppressing the news, they're not only not going after corruption and incompetence, they're giving people a sort of social proof that there's really nothing to see here. And in the case of Benghazi and many other cases, there's an awful lot to see.
And if they say it's not a story, then people assume that it's not.
That there's no story.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's meet Mell Flynn. Mell is from the Hollywood Congress of Republicans. And Mell, when I met you a few minutes ago, I remarked that this is what I like. I like a person who's willing to identify. We're here in Los Angeles, and everybody is in fear of never working again in Hollywood and all this nonsense. And so they don't want to tell anybody that they're conservative. But you, Mell, you just come flying right out. You're putting it out. No, that's okay. You're putting it out there. The Hollywood Congress of Republicans. Tell me about what the group does.
We're a grassroots organization founded in 2001, and we're made up of mainly people in the entertainment industry, actors, producers, directors, casting directors, etc. I myself am an actress, and I do some producing and casting. And I've been doing it for a while now, and yeah, I'm kind of out there. If you Google my name, I can't hide, you know, who I am. I try sometimes.
I think it's important to identify. It doesn't mean you have to wear your politics on your sleeve, but I don't, you know, homosexuals, lesbians in Hollywood, of course, who lived in a closet for too long, you know, and I wouldn't want to see a person have to deny who they are. But I think it's kind of funny nowadays. I kind of look at it as the all-new Hollywood closet. You know, it's the it's you know, you don't want to say anything because you know you're a Republican. But I've heard of more and more folks coming out as conservative or Republican, or even people who are willing to cop to being middle of the road. And I think that it's great that you identify, and we'll get into some of that tonight. You want to tackle some current events and then move on to some real big important topics? Can you handle it, Bill? All right, here we go.
I'm worthless in a week.
There is a United States Marine by the name of Sergeant Andrew Tomaresi. He's in an apparent border snafu about 2 months ago. He spent 2 months in a Mexican prison. There was evidently a problem where he had entered Mexico to a point with some weapons, and evidently he tried to report this and go back, and there was some poor judgment on the part of the Border Patrols and the Mexican police. He's been in a Mexican prison. He had a hearing today, May 28th. But I'm very interested in this story, and I'll start with you, Karen, because I look at this sort of a snafu here. I don't know what the real truth is, so I'm not going to pretend to know, but I get the sense that this is a case where perhaps the Mexican government should have got him a nice limo and be nice to the nice people up north, nice neighbors, and bring the young man back because he's a U.S. Marine, and you know, maybe we should just kind of move on. What do you think about this
well,
case?
I think it could have been dealt with one phone call, early, very early, like immediately in the game, to put him in that nice limo, if we had a commander-in-chief who cared one teensy-tiny bit about our military.
Now, in fairness, Karen, it's possible that he's operating behind the scenes. Mr. Obama might be saying something behind the scenes, but then again, it's been 2 months. Bill Whittle, what do you think about this?
What I think about this is if the most powerful man in the world is determined to do something behind the scenes, that thing's going to get done. You know, if the President of the United States decides he wants some major military action to take place, that's going to happen. Getting a single person out of a prison in Mexico is not beyond the capabilities of most commanders-in-chief. I can't speak for the current one, but I think her point is exactly correct. I think you really have to look at what this president values, because this is a president who has time to congratulate NFL football player for his kiss on the thing, which is fine. I have no problem with that at all. But he doesn't have an obligation to that NFL player. He doesn't have an obligation to spend time and effort on determining the March Madness brackets either. He does have an obligation as Commander-in-Chief to protect his service people. And it's not just the fate of this guy. It's a much bigger issue than this. It goes to morale. You think that if you're a young person and you sign on the dotted line and you are willing to sign away your freedom, that's what joining the military does. Somebody saying you're going to go over here and get killed now, or at least have a shot at getting killed. If you would think that in order to preserve the fighting morale of that force, you would want those people, if I was Commander-in-Chief, I would certainly want those people to know that the command structure and the government of the United States has their back no matter where they go. If it's something this simple, this guy should have been gotten out of there. You have some issues with Mexico because Mexico's got a big issue with not being told what to do by the Yankees, and I get this. I understand that they don't want, they don't want the gringos coming in throwing their weight around, and there's an issue of national pride for them. They can't just like let him go because the president did something. There's certainly any number of concessions he could have made. I agree with you completely. It's a question of his priorities. It's a question of where his heart is, where his actual heart is. And I think the president, regardless of his personal opinions, owes more to a Marine than he does to a gay NFL player.
Mel, let me ask you about this case. What are your thoughts about this Andrew Tomaresi case? It does seem strange to me, and as far as the Mexican government goes, somebody really should come along in the mix there and say, the optics are not good here. Let's just keep it smooth. What do you think about this?
Oh, yeah, going on what they said, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they're holding him for so long, and our Commander-in-Chief should have put pressure on him and should be right now to speed up that trial.
Publicly.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys know he got a new attorney today, so that's going to push things back even further. So hopefully, our president will put his influence in there, which he could, like they said, and get that thing speeded up to get him out. Because, like you said, they have their pride, and they don't want to just say, okay, let's let him go if they have to go through the formalities. but let's get a little help there behind
Yeah,
him.
and you know what? Bill Clinton said it quite smartly many, many years ago, decades ago. Being president's about what you want to shed light on. It's what you want to shed the spotlight
Yeah.
on. That's what you choose to shed the light on is really how you define
Can I
your
just add one
presidency.
thing here? There's a
Absolutely,
whole
good.
Twitter campaign to try and raise awareness for this guy, you know, bring the Marine home and stuff.
Yes.
I think rather than raising awareness of using the president and the State Department to get him out, I think we ought to go directly to the Mexican government. We ought to say, we're not going to vacation in Mexico anymore until this guy's set free.
Yeah.
And when enough people cancel vacations, when enough hotels in Mexico, in Cabo and other places, are starting to report cancellations because people were going to come on vacation, but they're not anymore because this guy's here. You really want to hit people where they live. That's the fastest way to get to the Mexican government. That way they don't have to say they're bowing to the imperial, you know, it's like, no, it's like, the American people are just going to bypass the government and the president. We're going to make it so painful for Mexico, economically, that it will no longer be in their best interest to keep this guy. He can come home for
Right.
4th of July, hopefully.
Karen, before I move on, do you think that the mainstream media has put enough attention to this? She's laughing already. Okay, that's a no. Just scratch that with
I
next topic.
scanned
Right.
this morning and
Yeah,
not a
nothing
peep.
going on?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
that's
one
unfortunate.
tiny peep,
This
with
is
the
a US
exception
Marine.
of Fox News.
Yeah, this is a U.S. Marine. I mean, please.
Exactly.
All right, folks. Well, this kind of dovetails into something that Michelle Malkin recently published that I thought was interesting. We have a VA hospital scandal, you know, the Veterans Administration hospital scandal that's been going on right now. And, folks, she wrote a piece, Malkin wrote a piece, sort of comparing and contrasting the treatment of illegals in American hospitals. And, by the way, that doesn't just include Mexican folks.
Right.
That's a lot of different people. But she contrasts our treatment of how we treat illegals with this Veterans Hospital Administration scandal, you know. And I wanted to get your thoughts. Bill, why don't I start with you on this one? Is this VA hospital scandal going to stick to Obama, or is this going to be the willful blindness of the media, and we'll just not pay attention to it? What do you think is going to happen with this VA hospital scandal in Obama?
Listen, I've been a critic of this president since he's been in office. I had high hopes for him. I really hoped he would not be the person I was afraid he is. But I think it is an absolute horrendous mistake to try and stick Obama with this issue, and I'll tell you why. Of all the things that happen in our national discourse, I put one thing above all the rest of it, and that's the safety and the welfare of our soldiers. There were 40 people in a in a VA in Phoenix, just in Phoenix, who died because they had to wait to get treatment. That takes priority over everything else, in my opinion. That is the one obligation that we all have as citizens that we can agree on. And to the degree that we decide that this is something that can hurt the president or hurt the Democrats, I think that is lovely politics, but it is slowing down the fixing of the problem. In this case, I would say I don't care who's responsible. I don't care who's at fault. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it sticks to. I don't care.
Right.
I want it fixed. I want it fixed now. And if by not pointing fingers on this one means we get it fixed faster and these guys get the treatment they deserve, then that's the way I would go with this one.
Yeah, Mel, let me get your take on this. I think Bill brings up an interesting point, is that I think a lot of this VA red tape and goodness knows what else is going on, I think this transcends, I wonder if it transcends the generations, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't blame, any one president. This has been going on for a long
You
time
bet.
now, so
You
that's
bet.
what we got to look at. And like Bill said, let's get it done, let's get it fixed. What are they doing? What's going on? I don't even know how this happens. How does this happen in
Right.
America? And I read that article,
Yeah.
the Michelle Malkin one. It's so interesting. Yes, illegals get better care than our own, American warriors. How does this happen? I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Karen?
I completely agree. It should not be treated, as Benghazi also should not be treated or considered a partisan issue. This really gets to the core of who we are as a people. We have a deep-seated mistrust, antipathy towards the military that is bigger than President Obama. It has got to be addressed. But today, somebody said struck me, and I went and I looked back at his speech, his primetime speech after the BP oil spill. And this is where I have a problem. His outrage, his sadness, his eagerness to get right on solving the problem was so much greater regarding the BP oil spill.
Because you can grandstand about big oil, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right, because it
the
furthered
boogeyman.
his green energy agenda, and he was on it. He gave that primetime speech outlining everything that was going to be done to solve it. Not that he did, but he spoke about it. And with this, what did we get? Namby-pamby, we're going to look into it. There will be consequences. There will be committees, period, which is code from Obama for, and don't believe a word that I just said. Just that contrast enrages me. Yes, it's nonpartisan. Yes, it's who we are. Yes, we should put politics aside. But how that man treated this horrendous situation, I find just repugnant.
Bill?
I think a larger issue, too, is, the Veterans Administration certainly developed a pretty bad reputation in the 60s. I have to say, just parenthetically, I've been to Walter Reed Army Hospital. I've been to the amputation ward there, and that is the finest medical treatment I've ever seen. But we're talking about the administrative red tape and the bureaucratic problems, not so much the actual doctors and therapists on the scene. But I think the point that probably needs to be said is this is one case where the government runs health care, and they run it for maybe 1 million, 2 million people. They want the government to run health care for 300 million people.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we are seeing the most valuable people we have in our society dying because they can't get to treatment after wounds they've suffered defending all of us, if that's the model for government-run health care, I don't think it speaks very highly of where they want to take us with what will eventually be single-payer, which is where they want to go. And I think the interesting flip side of that is, of all the proposals I've heard to fix this problem, I think my favorite one is there's a movement out there now to basically buy our soldiers private health care. Buy them health care, Cadillac plan, pay for it. And you know who would pay for it? I would. You want to hit me with a tax to pay for the private health care of our soldiers? Sign me up. That's a tax increase I'll pay. And I think, frankly, the quickest solution to this would be to simply say this. I don't know why, if we had actual political leadership and knew how to make an argument, we'd be in better shape. If I was a representative, I would introduce a bill into the Congress, and I would say that from this point forward, every single member of the United States military will receive exactly the same health care plan as every member of Congress.
Yeah.
It will be precisely the same plan as Congress. If Congress wants to cut benefits to the veterans' health care plan, that's fine. They're cutting benefits to their own health care plan as well. Who couldn't get that bill passed?
Right.
I like.
Okay, here's my next topic for tonight. I want to talk about the Tea Party versus the Republicans, which I think is sort of a sad tale that I think that has come down the pipeline in the last couple of years since the formation of the Tea Party, which of course, as you might remember, was really a response to the bailout of the banks. Now, the Tea Party seems to mean a lot of different things. There's a whole narrative that has grown up around the Tea Party. But here's what I want to ask the panelists. And Mel, I'm going to start with you. Do you think the Republican Party will ever embrace the Tea Party? My own personal belief is that, conservatives really don't hit the streets and protest. And when they are, and they're out there and they're energized, you would think, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, you would think that the Republican Party would welcome this, like a gift from heaven. But they don't. They seem to have a distaste for the Tea Party. I also wonder if the Republican Party has a distaste for conservatism itself. What are your thoughts right now about how the Tea Party and the Republican Party relate?
Okay, I'm like I said, a grassroots person, and I am a Republican, but I also am a Tea Party. I would consider myself part of the Tea Party as well. And as a matter of fact, a lot of us, part of the Hollywood Congress of Republicans, helped put together the first Tea Party in Southern California. We got speakers, we got the sound, we got people there, we did advertising promotion for it. So I don't know, it's hard for me to answer this because I am a Republican and I consider myself a part of the Tea Party. I know there's some people that put barriers between and think they're like different entities, and they can be at times, but I don't know, it's hard for me to say.
Bill, let me move on to you for a second here. Do you think that the Republican Party is going to embrace the Tea Party? Do you think they're making a mistake by distancing themselves? I think they're making a tremendous mistake, and I think there's a lot of conservatives who will stay home in big elections, and probably already have.
I think when you really get down to brass tacks here, you've got a fundamental problem with the whole idea of conservative politics as an idea. Liberals and progressives are in favor of big state and big government, and so the best and the brightest that they have go into government because that's where they feel that they can do the most good. And everybody who goes into government on the Democratic ticket is in favor of making Washington more powerful and spending more money. The kind of people that get drawn into politics in the first place are those kind of people. The kind of people that want to get into politics, just personality-wise, are the kind of people who like the perks, and they don't have to do 30 years of hard work forming a business to get a limousine. They get to travel around and get called sir and all the dinners and all this other stuff. So conservatives have a problem psychologically from the outset in that if your entire political philosophy is we want Washington to be less powerful and spend less money, the people who go into politics don't want that at all. They want more power and they want more money. So what you really do have is you have a split between Republicans. You have Democrats who want big government and more spending, and you have Republicans who want slightly less big government and slightly less more spending. And then you have actual conservatives in the Tea Party who say, no, we think government needs to be small and we need to spend as little as possible. So what you've really got is you've got a conflict between the people in the grassroots who actually believe the stuff that the Republicans claim to believe and the people inside the Beltway. And I'm utterly convinced now, I've seen 3 election cycles now, I'm utterly convinced that the Republicans in Washington now would rather lose, as long as they get to stay in office, than win with somebody else taking their seat. I'm utterly convinced of this. And that's the problem that we have. We have a fundamental philosophical problem.
So you think that the GOP would rather endure 8 years of Hillary Clinton
Without
than
question.
to take... Okay.
John Boehner would rather be Speaker of the House.
All right.
John Boehner would rather
I'm obviously living in a fantasy land.
John Boehner would rather be, I bet my life on this, would rather be Speaker of the House under
might be.
8 years of Obama and 8 years of Clinton than have Ted Cruz or somebody be Speaker of the House, even though he's in the Senate.
And come in and blurt out the truth
and
about a
win the
variety of
presidency
topics, right?
and actually get all this stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah, without question of it.
Yeah, but there are good GOP out there. I mean, there are good Republicans out there.
Right.
There's a lot of local. I mean, people forget that. They think Washington's all the Republicans. No, I'm a Republican. There's a lot of good Republicans here. And we work hard, and we are decent, and we are conservative.
I'm talking about elected officials, so obviously.
I know, but on lower levels, there are good ones, too.
Well,
you know?
then Mel, this gets even more and more interesting, and I'll move on here to Karen. Karen, obviously, there's a rift here, and something has to be done because, look, the tent has to be big enough to win, right? Bill makes some very good points, and I agree with, and I appreciate Bill's cynicism wholeheartedly. But
I'm an optimist.
okay, all right. Well, your realism, which is not welcome in all quarters. Being realistic, not exactly welcome everywhere. But I got to tell you, I think that this rift is fascinating to me. The Democrats have a very big tent. Unfortunately, it includes a lot of the left, the hard left, and the whole party's been pulled to the left. But now the Republicans are sitting there, and they've got this whole Tea Party movement,
right.
and this little rift and this bit of discomfort, I think, is one of the most interesting things that's come down the conservative pipeline in a long time.
And it's terrifying. We could theoretically take the Senate in 2014 and win big in 2016. Right now, it seems our biggest enemy is ourselves, and we have got to somehow get aligned to win in a bigger way. And it's very scary because what I'm seeing, yes, we talk about a big tent, but we seem to be shifting our tent to include those who don't like us and are happy to lose those already on our side. We are more eager to go after independents than we are to keep conservatives who are already willing to vote for us if we would only pull the tent a little bit more to the right. I've got my right and left backwards. But we are so willing to give up real conservatives as we go after those who don't like us already. We're willing to change our message, to move to the middle, to go for the centrist, undecideds, while sacrificing people who do believe in us, which is the Tea Party. We are losing the conservatives, trying to do this move to the middle.
You know what I find interesting, Karen? I'll offer my opinion here. The move to the middle, to me, means let's start talking about the borders. Republicans don't want to talk about it. The move to the middle, to me, means let's start talking about fiscal conservatism. 90% of this country wants to know where the money goes, if you ask me. I don't care what party you're in. They want to know where the money goes. And the idea of smearing the Tea Party is backwards, whatever, just because they're really asking where the money went, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I really believe that the middle, we'll call them Reagan Democrats, I believe the middle is captured, not by pretending that you're a little bit more of a Democrat or you're Republican light, but by staying staunch in your views and having these ideological debates. I believe that being willing to have ideological debates and bring things up that are very big ticket items about who we are as Americans, if you're not willing to blurt these things out, the way Ted Cruz and other people who I'm actually very hopeful about, Alan West, they would be willing to blurt things out the way Reagan blurted things out, like welfare queens. You know, things like that. You have to be willing to say things that are going to offend people. I think the Republicans are too wrapped up in this you know, dressed up, I'm a middle of the road guy, I'm not going to offend anybody. I think they're just too wrapped up in not offending. And so anyway, on that note, the next person I would like to talk about is Mr. Ted Cruz. Bill, you are familiar with Mr. Ted Cruz, are you not?
Yeah, we've been to a couple events together, chatted in the shower afterwards a couple times, snapped the towel back.
Ryan, listen, you don't have to tell me the whole thing.
He's a great guy.
I know you guys are close.
Yeah,
but
we're very close,
let me ask
actually.
you something, Bill. This guy looks to me like the kind of guy who's not afraid to blurt things out. And I'm all about blurting it out. I really think that the middle of the country would be seized by honesty.
I don't want to quibble with the choice of terms, but the thing I like most about Ted Cruz is he doesn't blurt anything out. Ted Cruz, when he served as when Ted Cruz was in Harvard Law, his professor said he was the most brilliant student they'd ever seen. So the first thing you need to understand about Ted Cruz is a bloody brilliant man. He was magna cum laude at Harvard Law School. He argued for Texas in front of the Supreme Court and won. So he is a gigantic intellect. He is not the kind of person. He's been an attorney for most of his life. He's been the state attorney of Texas. So he's not the kind of person. The comments, the primary criticism leveled by the establishment GOP against the Tea Party candidates is how unprofessional they are, how unprepared they are, how likely they are to make these stupid, inane statements. Ted Cruz is not that guy. I think Ted Cruz, I've had a chance to actually talk to him at quite some length. Ted Cruz is so genuinely nice that if I was counseling him on his presidential aspirations, the first thing I would do is say, Ted, you got to back off being so nice. You genuinely get a sense that this guy is a warm-hearted guy, and he genuinely is. He could use maybe a little more alpha. But I'll say this about Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has the fundamental qualities of what you were talking about before the break. He understands these principles, he loves these principles, and he's not afraid to defend these principles. And that's exactly what Reagan did. So much of what we hear from Washington now with these GOP candidates is they want to take a stand on something and somebody says, well, the polls are saying that soccer moms don't really like this, which is true. But it's not the job of a politician to follow the polls. The job of a good politician is to change people's minds, is to get out there and make an argument that says, this seems obvious, but it's not true. This is what actually happens. Here's a better plan for you. It's more in your interest to go with us down this road. And I think Ted Cruz has the ability to do that, and I think he's going to be the next president of the United States.
Mel, what do you think about Ted Cruz?
I like Ted Cruz. I've always liked Ted Cruz. He is refreshing. He doesn't blurt things out, but he will say what's on his mind, which I like and I appreciate that. And I understand what Bill said, you know, the GOP, they have, what it is their strategy, how to win, you know. And it doesn't always work. And sometimes you just got to find a good person who is a truly good leader and very intelligent and has some charisma.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, before I go over here to Karen, I'll just suggest that I think that the Republicans, and I've said this, I think I said this to Bill last time he was on with me, was, you know, we have this thing about these 5 swing states or some...
Yeah,
pathway to 270. This is stupidity to me.
Yeah,
you capture America's imagination from Alaska to Florida and everywhere else in between. You know, Karen, that's the thing. There's a whole narrative about conservatives and the way they are and all this. We've got to get to the big ticket, big ideas that make this country great, and I think that really resonate with people.
Exactly, and it really is shying away from being clear about what it is we believe in. That gets us into trouble. Right. If we had somebody, and Ted Cruz may well be it, he's unbelievably articulate, who could be eloquent about what it is that conservatism is all about. It's about empowering people. It's not about infantilizing. It's about creating independence rather than dependence. It's about rebuilding the opportunity to have the American dream. It's about getting the government out of our lives. I think if we took the narrative, each one of us, and asked people, do you really like government? Do you trust government? 99% are going to say, no, I don't trust government. That's a way in to say, well, then maybe you want to look at people such as Ted Cruz who think it's time to pull back. Why are you voting for bigger government when the answer is smaller government? And by the way, that's conservatism. People don't even know what it is. So we have to be clearer about it. The media is going to corrupt whoever it is we decide it is, Ted Cruz, it doesn't really matter. The media will create a narrative that will vilify whoever it is. We have to, yes, we have to have somebody who's clear about articulating what we stand for, but we also, here, the Tea Party, each one of us, has to also be clear about what it is that we need. And I think once we do that, the battle's half over, because most people in this country have conservative values. They might not be aware of it, though.
I'd also suggest that we need to find some people who are going to get up and say, we're the real liberals. We're the classical liberals.
Well, the classical liberals.
We have to take that word back.
It's been
and start to
corrupted.
put them on
Exactly
trial. So
right.
you're on the left. We're the real liberals.
Exactly.
She was talking about vilification because that's how they succeed. They vilify our candidates. And what the media will do is they will, and it's always the same pattern, they will try to put a conservative Republican into three categories. All three is even best. They're either evil, they're stupid, or they're old. Yeah. So let's play around. No, I'm serious. Let's play around. McCain is old and evil. Gingrich is old and evil. Romney is neither old or stupid, so he's just plain evil. Right. Bush was stupid and evil, and so was Sarah Palin, stupid and evil. But Cruz is neither old or stupid or evil. And that's going to present a real problem.
Yeah, I hope he does present a real big problem. And by the way, Ben Shapiro from truthrevolt.org just published a pamphlet about this exact issue. Go to Truth Revolt. Don't have time to talk about that right now. A couple of things real quick before we're done tonight. We don't really have time for this one, but I'm going to ask you both, ask all three of you real quickly. I'll start with you. Do Americans feel an encroaching socialism now? Do you think that, I'm not talking about Bill Clinton's America, I'm not talking about JFK, a Democrat, I'm talking an encroaching socialism. Do people feel it now? Between Obamacare, bailouts, et cetera.
Yeah, I think Obamacare is the thing that finally is waking people up. Before that, I would say no. No one, a lot of people are clueless because they're not political. They don't pay attention to what, current events, what's going on. But I think Obamacare really is a thing that is starting to wake people up, and they're seeing, because they're seeing it in their pocketbook.
Yeah, what they're being forced to do.
Yes, exactly.
They're being forced to do things.
So
Bill?
I think finally.
I'm sorry, Mel, did you have
anything? Oh, that's okay.
Some people like the idea of free health care. I like the idea of free health care, too. If health care were free, I'd be liberal about health care. So I don't know if it's so much encroaching socialism that they fear, but I think there's no question that Americans understand our culture's changing, and I think they fear an oncoming police state, a security state. I don't think they like this NSA watching every single email or every Facebook transaction. Even people on the other side of the spectrum can't like the idea of the IRS being weaponized politically. The drones, the constant surveillance,
and
the
police. Under Bush.
The police are getting more and more militarized.
Oh, my God.
And they feel that it's no longer safe to speak your mind in America. And I think that cuts across both parties and both policies.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is one reason Rand Paul is getting traction when he speaks around the country to colleges, to universities, because of exactly that issue. To Obamacare and that, I would add, I think a lot of people are waking up because of Common Core, rightly or wrongly. When your child comes home and you're realizing what they're being taught and not being taught, all of a sudden it hits you in a different place from Obamacare, not your pocketbook, but your children. And I think people are waking up to that too. And all of that is part of this encroachment of government into our lives. These are tentacles of control that are very, very difficult to break away from.
All right, folks, we've made it through almost an entire Glazov gang, and we've had no jihad talk at all. Well, we're going to close the show tonight by making you folks happy and giving you what you want. All right, folks. Actually, this is actually a very positive story. The Rolling Stones are going to play in Israel, Tel Aviv, on June 4th. Now, I'm a big Stones fan. I know Keith's an old lefty, and I'm sure Mick's an old lefty. And, of course, we have idiots like Roger Waters from Pink Floyd spray painting a Star of David on a pig and then flying it around the arena and telling the Stones they shouldn't go to Israel. I want to applaud the Stones for going to Israel like Neil Young did and stuff. Real quickly, Mel, what do you think about this?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
It's a great thing.
They should. Yeah, of course, it's a good
I'm glad
thing. And
to hear
Madonna and some other people are going.
Justin Timberlake,
exactly.
Neil Young.
So good for them. Go to Israel. Good thing.
Yeah, and evidently Bob Dylan told Ron Wood that they should go and play there. And after all these 50-some years, what do you think? I think it's a good thing.
It's so interesting because they're trying to paint Israel as an apartheid state. In South Africa, the minority was not allowed to vote. They were legally excluded from participating in the democracy. In Israel, Israel is one of two places in the world where Arabs have a guaranteed legal protection to vote. They can serve in the parliament. It's a precise opposite of South Africa. The other place is Iraq, by the way.
Oh, and Bill, let me just jump in. Where would gay Palestinians go to a nightclub? They would have to go
Exactly
to Tel Aviv,
right.
right?
That's exactly
So,
right.
you know, I mean, the irony is just,
It's just crazy.
it just makes me shiver.
It
I
absolutely-
mean, it's just amazing.
It's-
Karen, what do you think? Stones in Israel, good?
Oh, 2 thumbs
Good
up
for
and
them.
more if I had them. When I read this, I couldn't believe it's even an issue.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
no, I
really
know.
startled me. Why
Yeah.
are we? I mean, it's great we're talking about it, that it's happening, but really? That there are people who
Yeah.
won't play in Israel?
Yeah, no, I agree.
just don't even understand.
Listen,
That's
it's like
just so completely insane.
Andrew Clavin said, you know, he relayed that message. Politics is downstream of pop culture, of culture, right, Bill?
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
He ought to
It's
say
close
that.
up,
I
right?
want to give him one.
It's close.
If we're going to quote Andrew Clavin on this show, I want my picture taken out. I want a black
All right.
card. No,
Okay.
he's exactly right.
Karen Siegemund,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Whittle, thank
Thanks,
you. And Mell Flynn, thank you. And thank you for watching the Glazov Gang. And again, I'm not Jamie. I'm Josh Brewster. I'm here, and thank you very much for watching.